as we have discussed, we are doing pictorial analysis, and we are looking at the areas of 1830s to 50s and the settlement of Port Phillip district, and a particular part of Melbourne's history which today is very sort of ambiguous as to now whether it's seen as a good thing or a very, very poor thing. And as we know, we've looked at Port Phillip and John Batman's Treaty. Who can tell us about John Batman's Treaty first of all? Tom.
Was the treaty that John Batman got the Aboriginal tribes to sign in the Port Phillip Bay area to basically hand over tens of thousands of acres of hectares of land for some scissors and some axes and a bit of flour, and yeah.
Absolutely. And as we have already sort of analysed a few documents, let's just go over what we really need to do to try and ensure that we are analysing a pictorial image properly. Okay, first of all, it's great to know if we know the artist, the date and the title of the painting. Why is that, gents? Why would we want to know the date of a painting? Finn.
To work out what perspective it was written from, and also in what period it was written, to represent the views of that current period and culture.
Absolutely, definitely, and we've discussed that too, especially with our views on Indigenous Australians and how they've changed over time. Why would we want to know who drew it? Yes, Smithy?
Well, for example, if it was like, you'd want to know if it was like a white person or an Aboriginal, because then it could affect like the different views shown in the painting.
Absolutely, definitely, okay. And then lastly, a title. Why a title? Yep, James?
Because it can give you an idea of what you're sort of looking for and what the painting's about.
Absolutely, especially if there's a painting when we're actually not sure what it was. Tom in our, the painting last lesson was like, oh, are they wearing Santa Claus hats? You know what I mean? No, they're actually wearing beanies. But really, really good question, because we're not sure. Okay, so then we've sort of broken up attitudes reflected in the representation or document. Use evidence from the representation to support your comments. What do I mean by that? Yep, Maxie.
Say what you see in the picture.
Yeah, really briefly, just try and state what you see. Okay, secondly, and probably more importantly, evaluation of the...
Explaining more about what you see in the picture, like explaining it sort of a bit about what it is.
Yep, and can we go a bit further with that, gents? Yep.
What it represents and how it's that representation is portrayed in the picture.
Okay, definite analysis, isn't it? Okay, it's not just summarising what you see, it's giving you the ideas of what the point of this painting is meant to be. Who is it for? What's the point of it? What are the attitudes it's trying to convey? And then lastly, which is analysis towards the changing attitudes towards the issue. Have interpretations have changed over time? Okay, and that's pretty self-explanatory as well, and we've done that through last period. How were Indigenous Australians perceived back in 1830? How were they perceived in 1900? Were they forgotten? Was it the celebration history? Remember when we looked at, was it Shaw? Or which, no, Scott. Remember it was Professor F. Scott we looked at? And then again later on. Okay, was that the exact time of the treaty? No, when was the treaty, Hendo? Anyone know thereabouts when the treaty was? When did Batman go over from the Port Phillip district from Van Diemen's Land?
1830s.
Yeah, in the early 1830s. Okay, so how many years after is that? Mathematics. In the painting. Hendo again.
John Batman meeting the Wurundjeri people with all the things he was prepared to trade for the treaty.
Okay, so all the trinkets, as I've underlined here, are there. Right, not too well. They're the trinkets, and what types of materials were they again? Does anyone know specifically, Max?
Scissors, knives, shirts, flour, stuff like that.
It seems quite peaceful.
Very peaceful, doesn't it? Looks very happy, looks very civilised, and looks very accepting on both parties. Everyone's in agreement. Have a look at the image of the Wurundjeri leader or chief with Batman. Where's his hand?
On his shoulder.
Hugh?
On his shoulder, so it's like showing friendliness and that they agree to it and everything.
Absolutely. Okay. Analysis. Second part. What's going on here? What do we think? Evaluation of the representation, how it reflects the attitudes and issues of the particular point in time. So in 1875, how were people thinking? Tom?
Well, in that time period, they were thinking that the Aboriginals were very backward and primitive group of people, and this is pretty evident that they're giving so much land for things that for white people would be worth nothing, nowhere near as much as they are getting, and it's just reinforcing that view that they are stupid and backward and don't know what's happening.
Potentially, yeah. What else? Anyone else got anything from this particular image? Finn?
Well, it's obviously trying to propose that the acquisition of land was fair from the Aborigines' point of view, even though most modern historians agree that the Wurundjeri people had absolutely no idea what they were doing and what John Batman was trying to propose. So, to a large extent, it's probably a piece of propaganda.
Absolutely. Great piece of propaganda, isn't it? And as we'll go through, I've actually got an image of another Batman's treaty done by another artist, and another one as well, which we'll go through a bit later. But there's the treaty itself. Would the Indigenous Australians or Wurundjeri ever dealt with the word treaty? Would they ever have signed a contract, especially in the Western views? Absolutely not. Was there any understanding of how the Wurundjeri lived in...
He was just handing over a contract and a few loose items.
Absolutely. Any other points by anyone? Yes, Danny.
It shows that, obviously, well, as we already know, it just reinforces that when the white settlers first settled in Victoria, they really wanted to buy land so they could start up farms and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so very different, isn't it? And we've talked about the unassisted, we've talked about the assisted immigrants, we've talked about the Henties coming in, we've talked about John Batman being part of the Port Phillip Association, and they're trying to build land, agriculture, wool, wheat. Our country, for many years built on wool and wheat. Finn?
I think that on the other hand, though, at least Batman probably tried to make some sort of deal.
Farming or pieces of land gridded, etc. That's what they claimed. So the government to Batman were, no, you can't claim this land or say that it's now your land because it was no one's in the first place. So it's actually all Crown land. And that's what they said to Batman. Okay, so he couldn't take everything that he'd wanted to take. Everyone see the image, okay?
Oh, different image.
All right. Camera crew, you ready?